Hi guys, you're welcome to Hello Junior's Ideas. I'll show you how to perform CRUD combining Python with SQL. SQL stands for Structured Query Language. So the way this will work is I have this Python script, then I have a database server somewhere, then I'll look for a way to connect my Python script to the database server. So to keep everything simple, I'll be using SQLite as a database for this particular tutorial because SQLite is just a database file involved. It will be in the same directory as this particular um, Python script. It will be somewhere here. So just to keep everything simple, the first thing I would do is to import SQLite into my Python script. So the SQLite, as I'm importing SQLite, I'm also importing the error class from SQLite so I can catch all the possible errors, handle all the exceptions that I'll possibly encounter as a result of running this particular Python script. Then we'll move on to write a function with which we will establish connections. Okay, a function with which we will establish connection to the database. So establish DB link, we create a database connection to SQLite database. So I'm initializing this particular variable to none. Then in line 8, I'm connecting this Python script with this database file, mydatabase.db. At the moment, if you look at the file explorer, you will see I don't have this mydatabase.db. The file is not in existence. So what line 8 does is, okay, check if it is in existence, connect to it directly. If it is not in existence, create the file, then connect to it. So I'm just using print to just log to the console that it is connected to SQLite and the SQLite version that we are working with. Then it will return the DB link. Else, it will log the error, whatever error I get, it will log it to the console, then it will return none. Okay, so that is it basically. The next function that we are going to write is the function that will generate the table in the database. Okay, the function that will generate the table in the database. So a database is a collection of related of tables basically. So for this particular tutorial, we'll be creating one particular table, and the name of the table is going to be books. Okay, it's going to be books. Now, the fields that are going to be available in the table include the ID field, the title, author, and year. And this ID field is going to be an integer data type. Mind you, what is happening on line 20 is basically create table if it doesn't exist. So if you connect to this particular database and this table is in existence, don't create it anymore. Okay, but if it is not in existence, then create the table, and these are the fields you make available on in the table. So I have the ID field, which is an integer. An integer, basically a positive whole number. Okay. Then it is going to be the primary key. Then it will auto increment. Let me explain each of these terms one after the other. So this ID field is going to be a positive integer. Okay, starting from 1, 2, 3 up. Then we have the primary key. The primary key stands as the means of identification for each entry. Okay, they are basically in a university or a tertiary institution, you have something like a matric number. So this field is going to be the matric number. In the US, you have something like social security number, just a field with which you identify the entry in a particular database. Then this auto increment stands for the first entry we take the ID of 1, the second entry the ID of 2, the third entry the ID of 3, the fourth entry, and in that order it continues. So moving on to the next field, which is the title field. The title field is going to be a text data type, and this text data type means basically you're going to be having alphanumeric characters with special characters as well, and it cannot be null, meaning that it cannot be empty. Same thing goes for the author. The year is an integer, positive whole number. For example, 2000, 2002, 2004, they are all whole numbers. So after this is my query, basically my SQL command. Then I have to create a cursor. Okay, this cursor will be used to execute this particular query, and that is the executor that I have over here, dblink.cursor. So if you check this dblink over here, it is going to be returning none or a database connection. So you see the way we are breaking everything into a function now. When we are done writing all the functions available, there will be a main function that will bring everything together. Then you see how we are connecting each of the functions together. But for now, this DB link is coming from this particular function. So it will create an executor, then the executor will execute this particular query. Then it will print table created successfully. Okay. Now moving on to the next one, we need to write a function that is going to perform the create operation. Don't forget CRUD. So we have C, R, U, and D. C stands for create, R stands for read, U stands for update, and D stands for delete. Okay, so we want to now write the function that we do create, and this is the function over here. So it will add a new book to the books table. Okay, now the query for adding a new book will be insert into books. Books is the name of the database table that we created over here. Insert into the books, insert into books. The fields where we want to insert include title, author, and the year. You will notice that we are not inserting any data for ID because the ID is automatically generated. Okay, so and we are going to be passing in the title, the author, and the year as a tuple. A tuple is a collection of items that cannot be modified. It is not mutable. So we are going to be passing it in as a tuple. The first basically, which is the zeroth element in the tuple, will take the place of title. The first element will take the place of author, while the last element will take the place of year. Don't forget, we have to use this DB link to create an executor, then basically a cursor. Then the cursor will be used to execute this query we have over here. Then the data that we are passing into this particular field that will stand for title, author, and year. Like I told you, it's going to be a tuple. So then after executing, you have to commit. Okay. So after committing, we will return the last row ID, which will be the ID of this latest entry that we gave in. So that will be the last row ID basically. So we've written the function for create. The next function we want to write will be for read. Okay, so the function that will perform the operation for read, which is basically to return all the tables that we have in the database at the moment. So you can see the way we said fetch all literature. We are passing the DB link, which is basically this cursor that we have over here. Okay, this DB connection that we have over here. So we will use that DB link to create a cursor, which is this executor that we have, executor.execute. Then select all books, select all from books. Okay, that is the command with which you fetch all the books available. Don't forget, these books is the name of the database table that we have, and this wildcard is telling SQL that it is all the entries that are in this particular database table. We want to fetch everything. That is what we are doing with this function. Now, you might decide to fetch a particular book, not all the books. You might want to fetch a particular book from the database table. All you have to do is, let me just show you how you will do that, but we won't be doing that in this tutorial. So you will just say, I've commented out this line. So where ID, you bring up the primary key, the primary field, which is the ID field. So where ID equals to, then you enter the name of the ID, you enter the number, the ID number, which can be 1, which can be 15 or whatsoever. So that is it basically. Let me just leave this as 3, but since I've commented it out, it is not going to execute. I'm just trying to show you the possibilities. So after selecting all from books, the records, you extract them using the fetch all method of the db cursor basically. Then you print everything to the console. That is what I'm doing with fetch all literature. So we've added the function to create, we've added the function to read. Now we add the function to update. So the function to update an existing literature is going to be this. To modify literature, basically to modify a book's information. So you update books. Don't forget the fields that we have to update: the title, the author, and the year. So I'm supplying the title, the author, and the year. If you want to change any of them, just pass in all the data of this particular field. Then you make sure that the field of interest is modified while you're passing it in. You will see how we do everything, don't worry. So where id equal to this. So basically, this line 68 is telling SQL that go to the database table, look for the field, look for the entry where the id is so 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 and so, then update all these particular fields. All right. So I'm going to be passing the literature tuple. So the tuple, the first, the zeroth element in the tuple will be taking the place of title. The first element will be taking the place of author. The third for year. The fourth will be the ID of that particular entry. Okay. Don't forget, after executing, you have to commit. You have to commit. Now we'll write the last one, which is delete. Which is delete. So for this particular function to delete a literature, it is very straightforward. So the query is going to be delete from books where id equal to this. So basically we are supplying only the literature id. Only the literature id. Don't forget, the name of the database table is books, and where the id is this. So executor equal to, we create a cursor, then we execute. Okay, we are passing in the query, this SQL query, then we are passing in the tuple which is carrying the literature id. All right, now after doing everything we commit. After doing everything we commit. So now to write the function that will bring everything together, the function that will perform all the CRUD operations that is required, you can just bring that here. So to this execute program is going to establish the database connection. Okay, you can see the db link, establish db link, which is what we have over here, establish db link. So it will either return none or a valid database connection to this mydatabase.db file. So if it returns a valid database connection, if db link is not none, meaning that it is return, if it is returning a valid database connection, then it will perform all these ones. But if it is none, then it will just say error, cannot create the database connection, and it will not execute anything. So come back here, assuming the database connection is valid. Now it will generate literature table. It will pass in this db link, which is the database connection that we have. It will pass it into generate literature table, which is the table that we have over here. Okay, create table if not exist. So after doing that, it will bring up the first novel, the second novel. Okay, you can see the title of the first novel, the author of the first novel, and the year the novel was published. Then we have the novel 2, which is a tuple as well. The title of the novel, the author of the novel, then we have the published year. Now we insert literature twice, for this one and for this one. If you look at insert literature, this is insert literature over here. Don't forget, I said you are passing in a tuple. The zeroth element in the tuple for this case is going to be this, and this is going to be taking the place of title. This is going to be taken for author, then year, and the same thing goes for this one. So one thing you will know is that after performing the operation to insert into books, we are returning the last row ID. So the last row ID is what is going to be returned into novel ID and novel ID. So it's just going to print to the console added books with the IDs of this and this. Okay, so let me see if we can add one more entry to this. Just one more entry. Just one more entry. So this is going to be novel 3. I can just say last days in the university. Then I can just say the author is Chris Halogen, and the publish year is maybe 2004. So let me also insert this um, Control D, and this is going to be 3. Then let me bring in this one as well. Copy, then paste. So this is going to be ID of 3. So we have 3 books inside our database as at line 96 basically. So this particular function is going to fetch all literature. We are passing in the database connection that we have, the valid database connection, into fetch all literature, and this is the fetch all literature function over here. It will go to the database. From this database table to fetch everything we have, pass everything into this records variable, then it will print everything to the console. Now let's perform an operation to update a book. To update a book, you can see updated novel equal to the novel ID one. Basically, the novel with the ID of one is the one we are trying to update over here. So I can just come here. Let me change the name to how many miles to Babylon. So I can just, let's say this guy became a, let me say became a barrister. Let me say ESQ. So maybe the year was wrong as well. Okay, let me leave the year. So you can see the novel ID still remains the same. So the novel ID cannot be changed actually. Then the year remained the same. I made modifications to this tool only. Then modify literature. I'm passing the DB link and the updated novel. Okay, the DB link, all the operations you want to perform, this database connection have to be present. So then the updated novel as well, I've passed it into the modify literature function. So after that, I will fetch all the literature that I have once more, just to be sure that this update is valid. Then to remove literature, just DB link, you pass the DB link, then the novel ID of the literature you want to remove. In this case, this is the literature that I want to remove, the novel ID 2. Okay, so you can manually add 2 or something here. Okay, it will still work fine, but let me just keep it as it is. Then after deletion, I will fetch all the literature that I have once more. So you see that I'm short of one literature as at 111. So when I'm done with all the operations I want to perform, I will close the link. I will close the link to show that I'm not having anything that I don't have any operations I want to perform anymore. So moving on to execute the program, I will say I will use this syntax: if name equal to main, then execute program. So this syntax is telling Python that this particular if I'm executing this particular Python script directly, run the execute program function, which is what we have here basically. So let me save this and pay attention to this file panel that we have over here. Immediately I run this particular script, you will notice that this particular mydatabase.db, it is not in existence. As of now, it is not in existence. So immediately I run this script, it will create it, then it will use this to run all the operations it has to run. So come here, I can just use this since I'm in VS Code. I can just use this. Okay, you can see my database.db. We will come back to this database file, but for now, let's check what we have in the console. So for the establish program, the execute program function. Okay, for the execute program function, this is it. So we are having a valid database connection. Okay, so connected to SQLite version 2.6, meaning that the database connection was valid. Then it created the table and added books with the IDs of 1, 2, and 3. And if you look at the 3 novels that we have, The Great Gatsby, which is all books, The Great Gatsby, F. Scott, this guy, you can see exactly what I have, exactly what we entered here, and exactly what we entered here. So after updating the okay, look at the updated novel over here. So we updated the novel with the ID of 1. Okay, and after the update, you can see the novel with the ID of 1. It is no longer The Great Gatsby, it is now How Many Miles to Babylon. And this guy, he became a lawyer overnight, then you can see the year of the published year, the same thing. So, but every other entry remains the same. Now, for the deletion, you see, I took out this particular entry. I took out this particular entry, so this shows that everything is working fine. Now, just to see what we have in this database file, open the database file, and now you can go to the VS Code extensions marketplace and install this particular extension to be able to browse this particular database file. If you go to SQLite viewer, scroll down to, okay, this is it, SQLite viewer by Florian Clamfer. So just download this particular extension and it will give you the ability to view this, to explore this database directly in VS Code. So you can see all the entries that we have in the database, and you can see the database table as well. So this is it basically for this tutorial. How to, okay, before we go, look at this ID field. Come here. If you go to the database table, where's the database table? You can see the ID integer primary key auto increment. Come here. This is the ID. It shows this particular key, and you can see it auto increments 1, 2, 3, like that. So that is basically it for this tutorial. Thank you very much for staying to the end. Don't forget to like the video and to subscribe to the channel as well. The comment section is open for all your questions, your queries, or if you require additional